Hello, my name is Inez. Welcome back to my channel. You may not be too comfortable with this new format of videos that I'm doing, but I had a little think about my vlog style videos and the what I eat in a days and the very cliche genre type videos that I was filming, and I suppose the meaning behind all of it. How many more times can you watch someone drink an overpriced matcha latte before it all starts to seem a little bit meaningless? And I thought of filming videos of me talking a bit more about what I think about art and the art that I consume and the art that I watch and the art that I participate in. So I'm a ballet dancer, and I've been a ballet dancer in my heart probably since the beginning, but on paper since I was 14. And I moved back to Poland and I devoted my teenage years to ballet. I spent so much of my free time consumed by ballet and taking ballet classes, and specifically I love choreography. I love ballet choreography and I love ballet choreographers. And one that has always been my favorite was Mr. George Balanchine. Mr. B. I have had a slight obsession with George Balanchine since I was in ballet school, which may be a little bit unusual considering the Russian imperialist influence in Poland on ballet. We always follow Russian style. All the ballet schools follow a Russian training system, which is beautiful and fine in its own way, but I've always been very interested in George Balanchine. So today I'm gonna tell you about 10 of my favorite Balanchine ballets, the ones that I think are magical and have really drawn me in. Let's start off where it all started for Mr. Balanchine himself in America, with Serenade. It's a 35-minute long ballet, which is already slightly atypical from the format we see in 18th, 19th century classical ballet. Balanchine stepped away from the traditional 2-hour, 3-hour long 3-act ballets, which is significant to note because although his ballets are shorter, most of them, not like Midsummer's Night Dream, but a lot of them are in this 30-40 minute time frame, you still get the magic and that feeling that you get from a typical ballet, at least for me. Balanchine was very devoted to his art, and you can see it in his pieces. So this is a 35-minute piece that was premiered on the American Ballet Theater students right after the school opened. It's performed to my favorite classical composition in the whole world, which is the Tchaikovsky Serenade for strings. It is just a magical, magical piece. So this is performed on the American Ballet Theater students, which, if you don't know, is directly linked to the New York City Ballet School. So even the New York City Ballet, I'm pretty sure to this day, only takes dancers that are brought up in the American Ballet Theater School and trained there, because the Balanchine technique is so specific. The ballet is performed by 28 dancers, all in all, in these beautiful white 19th century romantic tulle costumes, and it is really considered Balanchine's first American ballet, and this sets the tone for the years ahead of New York City Ballet and what the New York public can expect from this originally Georgian choreographer. Though this ballet is plotless, it is not completely meaningless. You can see definitely elements of loss and grief running through the ballet. There are moments of reconnection with some of the dancers and some melodramatic moments where the dancers are left on stage in a very intricate romantic pas de deux. So there does seem to be a meaning intertwining the whole ballet, though there is no narrative story. The next piece, which is personally one of my favorites, It's the Tchaikovsky Padala. I had the honor of seeing this live. I went to New York for the first time in my life this year. And obviously, naturally, the first thing I did was I booked 2 tickets to go see the New York City Ballet Spring Gala. And I got to see it on opening night, which was also the night of the protest, if any of you guys are informed. This is the night that Tyler Peck performed it, which was just spectacular to see. She performed it with her husband, actually, Roman Mej. I really cannot pronounce his surname, but he is also the son of a very famous dancer in the New York City Ballet. It was magical, to say the least. Tchaikovsky Padada, as the title says itself, is a padada. Musical composition ended up coming to life because prima ballerina Anna Sobeshtainskaya from the, I think it was the Bolshoi or the Mariinsky, no, it was the Bolshoi, had requested new music and a completely new padada because after a few performances she hated it. So this new piece was put in and she performed it, but it was never actually put into the final score. So this music ended up getting completely forgotten into the archives of the Bolshoi Theater, and it was rediscovered by the orchestra in, I believe, 1953, and caught the attention of George Balanchine, who got the rights to make a ballet to this piece and created this absolutely wonderful piece. And the costumes as well, they have this beautiful peach tone to them. It just feels like spring and magic, and it's everything you would want to see in a spring opening gala. Our next ballet, the classic William Shakespeare's A Midsummer's Night Dream, reinvented into a ballet by the genius mind of George Balanchine. So this is what the New York City Ballet wrote about A Midsummer's Night Dream as their description before the show started. Act 1. A forest near Athens on Midsummer Eve, Oberon, king of the fairies, is quarreling with his queen Titania over possession of her littlest attendant. A group of Thengans enter, including 2 young couples, one blissfully happy and the other at odds. They, being mortal, cannot see the fairy creatures all around them. Oberon sets out to teach Titania a lesson. He uses a magical flower to cast a spell which will cause her to fall in love with the first person she sees awakening. But when his servant Puck uses the flower spell on the young mortals, the effect is disastrous. At Oberon's order, Puck places a simple rustic bottom at the foot of the sleeping Titania, but only after magically transforming him by giving him the head of an ass. On awakening, Titania falls deeply in love with the creature, which, by the way, is this beautiful padada, which you will see. It's incredible between Titania and Bottom. It's honestly one of my favorites from the ballet. In the dark and mist, as Hippolyta, also I'm sorry if I'm really pronouncing the names wrong, this is a Shakespearean play, it's not easy, hunts with her dogs, Puck uses his magic to sort out the warring couples and put them to sleep. Oberon's anger abates and he releases Titania from her spell. Theseus and Hippolyta awaken the lovers, and the act ends with a proclamation of a triple wedding. That's a little taste of what you can watch. 3 acts of absolute joy and magic. And something I absolutely love about this Balanchine ballet in particular is that though it is, sorry, I said 3 acts, it's 2 acts, but it is an hour and a half. There is no unnecessary acting. Now, I understand that the point of ballet as well is to set the tone, especially classical ballet, really classical ballets. But I hope maybe some people can agree with me on the idea that the Nutcracker, for example, is a little bit too much acting and too little dancing. As someone who loves ballet, I want to see ballet, and that's what I feel that Balanchine does really good. Nobody in his ballets is just background. Everyone has a very important role in every single one of his creations. It doesn't matter if you're not a soloist, you still are dancing. The first act of the ballet is very magical and enchanted, and you will see lots of fairies and also lots of flowy costumes. The second act, however, is a classical pancake tutu white wedding scene. So you get a little bit of both, which is also extraordinary. The next ballet I'm going to talk about is Jewels by George Balanchine. This is an American classic. This is a 3-act plotless ballet inspired by a jewelry store in New York that George Balanchine passed. Though it is once again plotless, you can see the ideas of the jewels spilling out through the choreography. When we start off in Act 1, the act is based off of emeralds, and even the positioning of the dancers from a bird-eye view, it all forms a jewel in every single one of them. So when we have, for example, the diamond, the third act, they will form this sort of shape, angled and flat at the top, the dancers forming obviously the top of a diamond, which is just so fascinating to see. And it is also seen as maybe a ballet that talks a little bit about the different styles of ballet. Rubies representing the American jazzified ballet. Diamonds are seen to represent the sort of imperialist Russian style, and the emeralds, the very traditional French school. It's just all in all interesting. There's so many little nuggets in there that showcase how he was inspired by these jewels. Even if you look at the hands, traditionally maybe in Swan Lake they could be a little bit more elongated, but actually in George Balanchine's jewels they are a little bit more lifted, forming this jewel-like angle. So there's so many ways where you can just see his ideas and the details, which is something I just so deeply appreciate in his work and in ballet in general. The next ballet I want to talk about is Who Cares by George Balanchine, of course. The musical composition to this is George Gershwin. Once again, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. Why this ballet is so interesting, and it still made my magical ballet list, though it is not really magical and fantasy and fairies and whatnot, it feels like an old Hollywood film, and I love old Hollywood film. I think there is so much magic in how Hollywood used to make films, you know, and some of that magic we have unfortunately lost, and it's a loss I really long for to come back, because I think there's so much beauty and treasure in the musical choices and the dynamics between man and woman as well, that obviously just don't occur in Hollywood anymore. Hollywood is a completely different thing right now, but this ballet is so intricate and so interesting to watch. And I also watched the version with Baryshnikov in it, which incredible, of course. It's a ballet that feels like a tap dance, a Broadway show, and an old Hollywood film. It's 2 acts. It starts off with the first act with corps de ballet members, and the second act, which is a very interesting exchange between 3 female dancers and the main male lead. Also the costume choice created by Miss Karinska, which we will talk about a lot here when it comes to George Balanchine, because she was an incredible woman who created so many iconic costumes as well with jewels. Miss Karinska also created the costumes, and they were then exhibited in the museums. The ballet in the second act has, as I said, this beautiful exchange between the women and showing off their skills and their sass and everything that really you love to see on Broadway, but put it on point. I mean, it's just crazy to see. But then it ends up with all of them kind of meeting together and creating this beautiful, very explosive quartet, super musical, and just Balanchine. The next ballet we're going to talk about is Walpurgis Night. Walpurgis Night is a pagan tradition However, the exact traditions to follow will vary slightly depending on whether we're talking about the German Walpurgis night, the Scandinavian Walpurgis night, and the Slavic Walpurgis night, where the witches come together to summon dark forces to make sure that everything blooms well before spring starts. So what you will see in the ballet is some beautiful corps de ballet dancing, and when I say beautiful, I really mean it, because I have never seen this much individualism in a corps de ballet. What I love about Balanchine and his ballets is that nobody is useless. Nobody's sitting on the side just being background noise. Everyone has a piece of individualism, even though it's a group piece. A corps de ballet is when the corps come together to perform in sync generally, but in Balanchine, that's not completely the case. There's just so much individualism within his group pieces, which I just love to see, and I also love to dance. Although this is not an complete original, this was not Balanchine's idea. Walpurgisnacht is actually at the end of Faust. However, I still include it in this list because there's something about Balanchine's work that is just completely different. It's a different style, it's a different world, and I still find it very magical. And you will even realize, if you know the Walpurgis night variation, which is super popular in the competitions. It starts with you're running, glissade, pas de chat, and you go into the ground on your, you don't go actually on your knees, but you go like you bend a little bit, and then you have that little turn in attitude in plié with the extension. That's not Balanchine, and I love that variation, but it's not Balanchine. Balanchine created something, once again, completely polar opposite to what I know from Walpurgis night when I watched his version. The next ballet we're going to be talking about is Apollo. Apollo, I also had the honor of seeing live, performed by the New York City Ballet, and that was extremely magical. Apollo, inspired by, as you hear, the Greek myth of Apollo, the god of music and poetry. And in this ballet by George Balanchine, Apollo, this young god, is guided by and mentored by three muses, each symbolizing something different. They will have their own little segment of the ballet for themselves to showcase their mentoring skills and why they are mentoring the god Apollo. The ballet begins with Apollo alone on stage with his instrument, the lyra, or also the kitara, which is a traditional Greek instrument. Apollo is showing really why he is a god. This is a very beautiful solo, and is very an unusual way to start a ballet, which is also what Balanchine did. Usually a ballet will start with the corps from the act one, but this ballet is just 4 dancers, Apollo and his 3 muses, and each muse has her own respective symbol. Calliope is the muse of epic poetry, and she is presented a tablet. Her whole variation is done with this tablet in hand, and each of the muses is pointing her fingers. They're teaching him something. They're pointing him where to go, where to think, what to learn. That's kind of my take on it. So that is Calliope, the first muse. Second muse is Polyhymnia, which is the muse of mime, mimery. The whole solo, she has her finger on her mouth, which is also very interesting. All of these solos are not super expansive and quick. I would say the solos showcase a lot more calmness and balances. Like there's these super interesting turns between them when they're all together, of the muses going down on their point shoe all the way down, like they're doing that power squat, and then getting out of it and posing with their leg extended. You might not understand what I'm saying, but if you watch the ballet, you will see. So you definitely get the feel that they are mentors, that they are mature and wise individuals. And the third muse is Terpiştere, the muse of music and dance. She will also be holding her lira, her chitarra, while she does her solo. All of these muses come together to bring the knowledge to Apollo in order for him to be the best god he can possibly be. And at the end, they all have their exchange, their variations, but at the end they all come together to kind of bring their powers and their wisdom and their wiseness and go to Mount Olympus together. Ballo della Regina is the next ballet we're going to talk about. This is also quite a brief ballet with a full body, corps de ballet, and solo and pas de deux in it, but it's only around 16 minutes long. Ballo della Regina, also a plotless, but it's just really enchanting as a ballet. It sounds almost like birds chirping, really spring feel to it. It is not one of the Balanchine ballets that is super geometrical, and definitely feels a lot more free, which is something I associate with ballet so deeply, of course, and it's just really beautiful, to say the least. This ballet was created to the musical composition of Giuseppe Verdi, and this is almost like scrap music, really similar to Tchaikovsky's Pas de deux, from the piece Don Carlos. This music was later used by George Balanchine to create this little segment of virtuous variations, really, that composed this beautiful ballet together. Some people say that this ballet portrays, you cannot fully see it with the scenery, but you can see it through the lighting choices and the costume design. It seems to portray the original story of a fisherman finding his perfect pearl. That's kind of it. Once again, not very intricate plot, but so much beauty and magic in the choreography itself. The next ballet we're going to talk about, which I plead you to watch, is Stars and Stripes, and I will have linked a full video from 1973 performance in Berlin from the New York City Ballet themselves. Now, this is a very interesting ballet. You might see it floating around Instagram or YouTube shorts, people dancing the variation or the pas de deux section. Usually they post it for 4th of July, but you'd be surprised to hear that this piece was not created for 4th of July. It was actually created by George Balanchine because of the passing of the mayor of New York City and founder of the City Center of Music and Drama. This is why the ballet was created. This kind of American ode was not actually a 4th of July present. It was for the mayor of New York City himself. I think it highlights very well how Balanchine felt about his identity as an American. He is originally from Georgia, but he felt so connected to America and everything that America did for him, and New York specifically, just how he flourished and how much he was respected, and for his geniusness, really, and just how much he could flourish in this environment. The costumes were made by Miss Karinska herself. Each are part of 5 different campaigns when it comes to the marches, because the first half of the ballet is basically a 4th of July parade, and you can see that in the costumes, in the very traditional parade themed music, and each one of these campaigns will have their own themes to the music. And then you will see later on that beautiful and iconic Stars and Stripes pas de deux and the variation, and it just screams American delight. It's just very joyful and cheery. It's just a symbol of freedom and happiness and American identity, you know, that is actually proud to be American and proud to be in their country. This video has to come to an end, but not before we mention our last magical Balanchine ballet. And I'm gonna end it off with something that he is known for. It is magical for anyone who loves to watch dance and who loves to watch ballet, and the amazing compositions between dancers and just how interesting choreography can be. We're gonna be talking about Balanchine's most notable works, which is Agon. Agon derived from the Greek word contest. This idea of competition, contest between the dancers, is seen intertwined all throughout this piece. It is a piece between 8 dancers, 8 female dancers, and 4 male dancers. This is what a lot of people associate with Balanchine. It's white tights, black leotards. You will see a lot of flex point, turns completely on flat, turns on plie, and so much legs just going kick and kick, penché, kick. But I love it. But I seem to love it. Now, I love the classics. Don't get me wrong. I love classics. That's why I read classical literature. That's why I'm a classical dancer. I love the classics, and I think we should always cherish the classics. Yet somehow I am completely infatuated by this specific Balanchine piece. It is extraordinary. I wish I could talk forever about this, but the video would be 3 hours long, and there's so many more ballets I would like to mention. Ones that definitely deserve a notable mention was, of course, Firebird. But I can't include Firebird because I would be lying. I've never watched the whole thing because I cannot get a video of the full thing. I've only watched variations and sections of the ballet, so it would be wrong to include it. You know, Slaughter on 10th Avenue, a really great piece. We have Chaconne, which I actually saw live. They have beautiful, you know, hair let loose and down. It feels so feminine and beautiful. And Tarantella as well, 6-minute piece. It's Cigane. There's just so much that could be mentioned, but I cannot do it all. On that note, thank you so much for joining me in this video, and I hope to see you again.